Imagine a plant so aggressive it can grow 1 foot in a single day. A vine so relentless it swallows abandoned cars, climbs telephone poles, and devours entire forests. In the American South, they call it the vine that ate the South, and for good reason. Kudzu, with its seemingly innocent purple blooms and heart-shaped leaves, has become one of the most devastating ecological disasters in American history. But here's the twist that makes this story truly remarkable. The United States government did not just fail to stop kudzu. They actively planted it. They paid farmers to grow it. They celebrated it as a miracle. This is the story of how a good idea became an unstoppable green nightmare and what it teaches us about the dangers of tampering with nature without understanding the consequences. The year was 1876, and Philadelphia was hosting the Centennial Exposition, a grand celebration of American progress and innovation. Among the exhibits was a beautiful ornamental vine from Japan, with fragrant purple flowers that smelled like grape soda and lush green foliage that seemed to promise endless possibilities. This was kudzu, and Americans fell in love with it almost immediately. Gardeners planted it on porches and arbors for shade. Southern belles admired its sweet-scented blooms. It seemed like the perfect addition to the American landscape, an exotic and beautiful gift from the East that would beautify the nation. For decades, kudzu remained a charming curiosity, but everything changed during the 1930s when America faced an environmental catastrophe of its own making. The Dust Bowl had arrived. Years of aggressive farming practices had stripped the soil of its protective vegetation, and when the droughts came, the earth simply blew away. Massive dust storms swept across the Great Plains, burying farms, killing livestock, and forcing hundreds of thousands of families to abandon their land. The nation was desperate for a solution, and kudzu seemed to offer exactly what was needed. The Soil Conservation Service saw kudzu as a miracle plant. It grew fast, incredibly fast, and its extensive root system seemed perfect for holding soil in place. Government agronomists began promoting kudzu with evangelical fervor, calling it the savior of the South. The numbers tell the story of just how enthusiastically the government embraced this foreign vine. Through federally funded programs, the government distributed 85 million kudzu seedlings to farmers across the Southeast. They did not just encourage planting, they paid for it, offering farmers $19.75 per hectare to cover their land in kudzu. The Civilian Conservation Corps, the beloved workforce that built so many of America's parks and trails, was put to work planting kudzu across the eroding hillsides of the South. By 1946, an estimated 3 million acres of American soil had been deliberately planted with kudzu. Farmers across the region were praised for their patriotic efforts to save the land. Agricultural magazines ran glowing articles about the wonder vine. A man named Channing Cope became known as the father of kudzu, founding the Kudzu Club of America and preaching its virtues on his popular radio program. There was even talk of kudzu as livestock feed, as a source of starch, as the answer to seemingly every agricultural problem. The future seemed green, quite literally, with kudzu leading the way. But something was terribly wrong, and it was already too late to stop it. What government scientists had failed to understand was that kudzu had evolved in a very different environment. In Japan, harsh winters, natural predators, and diseases kept the vine in check. But the American Southeast offered something kudzu had never experienced before: a paradise without limits. The hot, humid summers were perfect for explosive growth. The mild winters meant the vine rarely died back completely. And crucially, none of the insects, fungi, or diseases that controlled kudzu in Asia existed in America. The vine had been released into an ecosystem with no natural enemies. The biological specifications of kudzu read like a horror story written by nature. The vine can grow up to 1 foot per day during the summer months, with individual vines reaching lengths of nearly 100 feet. During peak growing season, you can almost watch it move, creeping across fields, climbing fences, reaching toward anything that might give it purchase. But the true terror lies beneath the surface. Kudzu develops massive root systems that extend more than 10 feet into the earth, with individual roots weighing up to 100 pounds. These roots store enormous amounts of carbohydrates, energy reserves that allow the plant to survive cutting, burning, and even herbicide applications that would kill any ordinary plant. When you cut kudzu above ground, you are merely pruning it. The root crown sits patiently underground, drawing on its vast reserves, ready to send up new shoots the moment conditions allow. Kudzu possesses another superpower that makes it nearly unstoppable. Like legumes, it can fix nitrogen from the air, enriching the soil beneath it at a rate of 235 kilograms per hectare per year. This might sound beneficial, but it is actually an order of magnitude higher than native plants, fundamentally altering soil chemistry and making it harder for native species to compete. The vine also reproduces through clonal spreading, forming new roots wherever its stems touch the ground. Cut it back and it simply grows faster. Pull it up and any fragment of root left behind will sprout again. Kudzu is, in essence, a vegetable hydra. By the 1950s, the warning signs were impossible to ignore. Kudzu was not just preventing erosion, it was consuming everything in its path. The vine began swallowing abandoned farms, left behind by farmers fleeing boll weevil infestations that had devastated the cotton industry. Without anyone to cut it back, kudzu spread with terrifying speed across the southern landscape. In 1953, the USDA quietly removed kudzu from its list of recommended cover plants. By 1970, it had been officially classified as a common weed, and in 1998, Congress finally listed kudzu as a federal noxious weed, banning its transport and sale. The miracle plant had become a federal menace. The devastation kudzu causes is both dramatic and insidious. The vine kills by smothering, climbing over trees and shrubs, and blocking out the sunlight they need to photosynthesize. Imagine a forest slowly being buried under a green shroud, each tree struggling and failing to reach the sun. The weight of the vines breaks branches and can even uproot entire trees. Native plants beneath the canopy die in the permanent shade. What remains is what ecologists grimly call vine barrens, landscapes of eerie green monotony where biodiversity has collapsed into a single dominant species. The birds that once nested in diverse forests disappear. The insects that pollinated native wildflowers vanish. The small mammals that depended on native plants for food move on or die out. An entire ecosystem, millions of years in the making, reduced to a monoculture of invasive vines. But the damage extends beyond the visible landscape. Scientists have discovered that kudzu fundamentally alters the chemistry of the AIR itself. The vine's prodigious nitrogen fixation doubles emissions of nitrogen oxide from soils beneath it. This nitrogen oxide contributes to ground-level ozone pollution, a main component of the urban smog that chokes cities across the South. In an almost perverse irony, a plant introduced to help the environment is actively making air quality worse. Today, kudzu covers more than 3 million acres of American land and continues expanding by roughly 50,000 acres every year. It has been documented in 31 of 50 states, far beyond its original southeastern stronghold. The economic toll is staggering. Forest productivity losses alone cost between $100 million and $500 million each year. Landowners in Mississippi, where kudzu has invaded more than 500,000 acres of private forested land, lose upwards of $54 million each year in timber sales that will never happen because the trees are dead or dying under blankets of vine. The costs of fighting kudzu are equally sobering. Effective control requires spending approximately $5,000 per hectare each year, and even then, complete eradication remains essentially impossible. An established kudzu population may require up to 10 years of continuous herbicide treatment to eliminate, and the deep taproot systems mean that any missed plants will simply regrow. Power companies in the South spend $1.5 million each year just repairing damage to power lines caused by kudzu climbing poles and weighing down cables. The vine has become a permanent tax on Southern infrastructure. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of the kudzu story is that it is not over. In fact, the worst may be yet to come. Climate change is rewriting the rules of where this invasive vine can survive. Researchers have documented northward and westward migration patterns that correlate with warmer winters and higher atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. The very conditions that make kudzu so aggressive, warmth and abundant carbon dioxide, are precisely what human activity is increasing across the planet. Kudzu has already been found as far north as Maine and even across the border in Ontario, Canada, places that would have been unthinkably cold for this subtropical vine just decades ago. As climate change brings milder winters to northern states, the vine's range is expected to continue expanding. The green monster is on the march, and it is heading for territory that once would have been too cold to survive. Cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Minneapolis may one day face the same smothering invasion that has plagued the South for generations. In a twist of irony, some researchers and entrepreneurs have tried to find silver linings in the kudzu catastrophe. In Asia, where the vine originated, it has been used for centuries for food, medicine, and fiber. The roots can be processed into starch for cooking, a common ingredient in Japanese cuisine. The strong fibers can be woven into cloth, paper, and baskets. Southern artisans have even created a small cottage industry crafting kudzu baskets, turning the invasive pest into folk art. Some researchers have explored kudzu as a potential biomass crop for biofuel production, reasoning that a plant which grows this aggressively might as well be put to work. But these uses remain niche at best, barely making a dent in the millions of acres choking the American landscape. The story of kudzu stands as perhaps the ultimate cautionary tale about introducing species without understanding the long-term consequences. Every element of this disaster was preventable. The warning signs were there from the beginning for anyone willing to look. Scientists knew that kudzu grew aggressively. They knew it had no natural predators in America. They knew it thrived in precisely the climate found across the American Southeast. They simply believed they could control it, that human management would keep the miracle plant in check, that the benefits of erosion control would outweigh any potential downsides. They were catastrophically wrong. The hubris of that era, the belief that nature could be bent to human will through sheer determination and government funding, created a problem that may never be fully solved. What began as a fragrant ornamental at a World's Fair, what became a government-sponsored savior during the Dust Bowl, what was planted with hope and patriotic fervor by millions of American farmers, has transformed into an ecological nightmare that may never be fully resolved. The 3 million acres of kudzu that blanket the South today represent not just an invasive species, but a monument to unintended consequences. Kudzu teaches us that nature operates on timescales and with forces that human planning often fails to anticipate. It reminds us that the introduction of any species into a new environment is an experiment with potentially irreversible consequences. And it stands as a green, growing monument to the hubris of believing we can engineer ecosystems without understanding them. The vine that ate the South continues to grow 1 foot per day, a living reminder that some mistakes cannot be undone.